Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit contentious. It's a contentious issue because people get emotional about it and passionate about it, but it needs to be said. The conversation needs to start, and it needs to start from us. White people need to start admitting that we have had privilege. So yes, I'm going to talk about white privilege. That horrible word that freaks people out. It's a trigger word. But this is what it means. It does not mean that white people haven't worked hard for what they have. It does not mean that there aren't poor white people around there. It does not mean that white people built what they had out of nothing. I got it. Guys, that's my family story. My grandfather came here to try and build a new life for his family, and his wife and children got stuck in Madeira, and only could come here 10 years later. Not long after that, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother had to bring up 6 children in a country where she didn't know the language. She had to run a business and educate her children, and she did an amazing job at that. And I honor her. But that doesn't mean that white people have not been privileged in this country. Here's what it means for me in a workplace context. White people have connections, and not all white people, but more white people as a ratio to black people have connections in the workplace where they can find something. They can just start something, like, oh, can't you give this guy a job? And don't you know those people? There are still more white entrepreneurs in our country than black entrepreneurs. There are still more white CEOs in our country than black CEOs. The executives of businesses are still white on a ratio basis. So what does that mean? That means that little Johnny finishes school and he can't find anything and he doesn't know what to do, or he finishes varsity. He might have worked hard. He got his CA and he worked really hard. It's easier for him to find something because he can say, Dad, can't you get one of your mates to help me find something? And then he starts. Once he starts, he probably works really hard and makes sure that he does his job well, and that's why he also ends up in management. But he got the foot in the door. If you've grown up in a township or in a place where your parents do not have connections, have not ever worked in a corporate place, where do you get those connections? How do you get that foot in the door? Where do you even start to look for a job? Again, I'd like to say, I understand this is not all white people and not all black people. I've got it. But in our country, where the bulk of the people are black, but the bulk of the money is still in white hands, this is a problem, guys. This is a problem. Another thing that I think we need to talk about when we talk about white privilege is that understanding of what it means to be at work, what it means to work. When I was young, both my parents worked. My dad owned his own business for a short while, but he worked in an office most of his life. My mom has worked in offices most of her life, mostly for churches and institutions, but she's worked in offices. She's worked at Anglo American for 20 years. And so while we were around the table, nobody ever sat us down and said, guys, when you go to work, you have to phone in if you're going to be late. You have to get a doctor's note if you're going to be sick. You have to... But we know that, and it's common sense. Why? Because we had someone to model our behavior on. People in our lives were doing that. They would call in and we would hear the conversation, and so by osmosis we learned. While we were sitting around the dinner table, my parents were having a conversation about what happened at work today. Oh, the silly cow, she said this, she did that, da, da, da. And my father would give my mother advice. My mother would listen back and argue back and say, no, but I can't do that, doll, because of this, that. And so we were learning by osmosis how to behave in a workplace, what to do when someone argues with you, that you can push back, that when you shouldn't push back, who to respect, how not to respect, what are the politics of the workplaces. When we were little, we would go to my mom's office during the school holidays and take photocopies of our hands and sides of our faces. For the bulk of the population of South Africa, they were not exposed to that. The bulk of black population in South Africa were not exposed to that. If they went with their parents to work, they were going to a house where they would stand by the pool because they didn't know how to swim. Guys, white privilege is the privilege that we have that has allowed us to have a head start. That's all it is. It's not saying we haven't trained for the race. It's not saying that we haven't run our heart out in the race. But we had a head start. And because of that head start, we shouldn't feel guilty about it. It is what it is. I can't feel guilty that my parents both had jobs, that I grew up in a country where there was apartheid. I didn't make apartheid. I can't feel guilty about it. I'm not asking you to feel guilty about it. But I'm asking you to understand it, to accept it, to acknowledge it. And once you've done that, then do something about it. Give someone a hand. I'm working on a project with 23 young learners from Enidale at the moment. And we're trying really hard to find workplaces for them. And unfortunately, some of the workplaces that we've had for them have seen them as free labor. That's not the point of the project. That's not the point of learnerships and internships. The point of learnerships and internships, and why the CETAs and BEE and all of those things are trying to force companies to do these things, is so that people can get a foot in the door at a business and say, right, I'm in. Now I have a chance to prove myself. But not just the foot in the door. Also mentorship, learning, understanding, because remembering that those kids didn't even have dinner tables, never mind conversations around them. We have to understand that we come from a different place. We have to understand that if we own businesses and our people are not phoning in because they're going to be late or not, we have to be a little bit more understanding and teaching. We need to seek to guide, to teach, to understand, and then to invest in the future of this country. We cannot talk about a high rate of unemployment, but then allow people to continue to remain unemployable. Don't feel guilty. Guilt is wasted. Acknowledge, accept, understand, and then do something.